So I'm going to use WebCredible's website and use his tutorial on how to make a basic menu. He does a really nice job here. Here's our bulleted list, which you've learned several weeks ago, and we're going to convert that into a menu item. Now I have this blown up pretty big, but you can see that we're going to take this vertical list and we're going to make it into a horizontal menu item. We can also make it vertical if you want, and I'll show you how to do that. So this is a transformation we're going to do from bulleted list into a nice menu item. Now, if you zoom in and look close, you'll see that he also added a gradient. So on each bulleted item, it goes from a white to a light gray. And he has a 1 pixel border around each item. Now you can go into GIMP and build this gradient, and what you would do is build a little sliver like this, about this wide, and then have it repeat on the X, and it repeats all the way across. So he didn't build this gradient as a rectangle like this. What he did is he built just this little sliver, and then he had it repeat on the x-axis going across, and that gives us our gradient effect. You can do this in GIMP, or this is a really great website. It's really grown up too over the years, and it's called Sumo Paint. If you go out to sumopaint.com, this is a graphic editor. And we're not going to spend a lot of time in this today, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that if you don't want to run GIMP on your computer, you can always go on the web, and here's a gradient tool, and I can click and drag across, and there's my gradient. If I want a different gradient, I can go up here, and I can pick any gradient I want, and I can also make my own custom gradients, changing my colors and the intensity and the sliders. So if I want it mainly white, you can see how I can change it to mainly white. And you can also do it horizontal or vertical. There's lots of other tools out here on Sumo Paint. You know, it's basically like Photoshop and GIMP. The only difference is it's online, and it's all free. So check out Sumo Paint. They have some really, really nice features. So here's our basic website we're starting with. I just have a H1. I put my title in. You can see it on my tabs. And I just did a 3-bar menu item. So here's that code. And I'm just using my basic template with my transitional code for XHTML. I changed my headers and my title and my H1. And then I just have a basic unordered list here. I could use target blank, but that would open up my menu item in another page. And normally when a person clicks on the menu, they expect the current page to be replaced with what they're looking at. So I'm going to leave my target attribute off. So here we set up our hyperlinks, and you can see by the indenting how much easier it is to read these items. I've also done a short item and a long item, and you're going to see how this causes a problem. So as you work with your clients, and this is invariably going to happen, your client is going to give you a list of menu items, and one's going to be very short, and then there's going to be a really long one. So you're going to have to train and cajole your client into making them all as close to the same length as possible. So I'm having this real extreme example here so you can see as we build the menu what happens when we have a really long item and a short item. And then we'll go back in and change these so they're all pretty much the same length. I'll do a quick save. I'll look at my web page, and you can see now that I've converted these all into hyperlinks. Not very pretty right now, is it? So the first thing we want to do is we want to get rid of the bullets. Oh, let's see. Notice that he's put a div tag around his menu. And this is the name of his div tag, so that's going to separate out these tags from everything else. The reason he's doing this is if he has an unordered list in his regular page, he doesn't want to turn every unordered list into a menu. So what he's doing is he's giving this a name, and he's saying just make changes on this unordered list, leave all the other unordered lists alone. So we better go into our code and do that. Now, an ID is what? One per page or multiple on a page? Pound. So we're going to use pound, and it's going to be one on a page. What would it be if we were going to have several menus on the page and we wanted to use this? It'd be a class, and then what symbol would that be? It'd be a dot. Yep, you got it. So I'm going to put a div around my code. So I'm going to say div ID equals, and I'm just going to call it nav just because it's, or we could call it navigation, and that's all we need to do. And then I'm going to take my stop div, and I'm going to put it down here after my UL. And I'm going to use my tip of marking my stop div so I know what it is. So I'm going to say ID navigation. Now, just for grins and giggles, I'm going to do another unordered list. And you'll be able to see that we'll be changing this list, but this unordered list will be unaffected. And again, I'll check my web page, make sure everything is good. We're not making those into hyperlinks. We're just doing a regular unordered list. So we want this will turn into a menu because of the div tag, and this will stay as it is. Now, the first step we want to do is get rid of the bullets. And as we go through this tutorial, what I would recommend doing is leaving yourself comments in the CSS so you know what these things are doing. And right here, this list style none is going to get rid of our bullets. But notice how he addresses the unordered list. He doesn't say just unordered list. He says the unordered list that's inside of this unique div tag. Now, he calls it nav-menu. We're going to call it navigation because that's what I named mine. So whatever you named your div tag. So I'm going to go up in my head, and in my style section, I'm going to go pound navigation space UL, and then I'm saying list style none. And again, I like to do my columns, so I'm going to move this out to columns. And leave myself a note. Remove bullets. I'm also going to use my debugging trick, and I'm going to put a border around these. It's going to be 1 pixel, purple, solid. This is just for debugging. Let me take a quick look at my page. And there we lost our bullets. And you can see that our margin is now 0. It's gone right to the edge of the page. And our padding is 0. You see we're really nice and tight there. We'll be able to adjust this later as we proceed. So our padding is at 0. And notice when we do one digit, that stands for top, right, bottom, left. They're all going to be 0. Same thing with margin. With one digit, it's top, right, bottom, left. So we did 4 things in one fell swoop. And just to show you the difference, I could go in here and change this to, say, 50. And I like putting in my pixels. And look at my results, and you can see my padding is in here at 50 pixels. I'm going to go back and put that at 0. Now, let's say we want to do these in line. So we're going to change the navigation for the LI. We're going to have them float to the left. They're going to move to the left. And here's our margin. So our margin is going to be top is going to be 0. Right is going to be 0.15 M, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. And then the bottom is going to be 0, and the left is going to be 0.15. So here's another short version for setting up your margin or your borders. And again, I changed the name of my IDs, so it's going to be navigation. And now we're changing our list items. So I'm going to float my items to the left, and then I'm going to set my margin. And again, I'm leaving myself a note. It's top, bottom, 0, right, left is 0.15. Now, in M is a unique style of measurement, and what in M is what is the width of, let me find the letter M here. It's the width of this character right here. That's an M space. Now, in the font I'm using here, everything is mono-spaced, so they all line up. But if we use a font such as Arial or Helvetica, the I's are real skinny and the M's are real fat. And that makes it much easier to read, makes it a much nicer looking page. So what this is saying is do it 15% of the M. So we're going to make it a little less than whatever this size is. And we'll fiddle with this a little bit so you can see what it looks like. If it was 1.00, that would be the same size as the current font size. If it was 2.00, it would be 2 times the font size. So let's take a look and see what this looks like. And now you can see that we floated to the left. This is how I got our horizontal. And now you can see our font size. So now I got a problem here. I'm going to put a break in here so I can get my standard bullet to go down. So I'm going to come down here and I'll put a few breaks in here. There. And do you see how we're only affecting this one div, and we're not affecting our standard bulleted list. So we can have bulleted lists throughout our page, and they won't all turn into instant menus, which is a good thing. Well, let's go back up and change this just to fiddle around. Let's change this to 2M, just to save myself some memory loss. I'm going to put this in my comment, 0.15 M, so I know what it was. And then I'm going to go in here and change this to 2OM. I could just say 2M also, but usually we break it down because a lot of times when we're making it smaller than the current size, then this would be the percentage smaller. So now you can see it's twice as big as the other ones, or the spacing is. What was I saying? Oh, I was setting up my margin. So do you see my margin now is twice the spacing of what M is. And how are we going to see this really clearly? Well, let's put a border in here. Border, 1 pixel, let's say pink, that goes nice with purple, solid. And again, this is just for debugging. Kind of help us visualize what's going on. So now you can see my margin is, so let's go in and change this to 0.5, and you see how it tightens up. Well, let's make it even smaller. Let's go a quarter, 0.25. And you see how it's tightening up. So in my comments, well, first of all, I'm going to go back to my 0.5, and I'm going to say adjust button spacing, because that's really what we're doing. Now, why would we use the M measurement? Does anybody know why they're using the M measurement here? And why is it a useful tool when you do CSS? Why don't we just say so many pixels? Monitor resolution, that's a good... You can't have half a pixel, so that's right. What happens if you put a pixel in and you say, well, I want this to be 10 pixels? It's always going to be 10 pixels, and it's not going to adjust. And let's say the client wants to change their look and feel, and they want to make things bigger. Let's say, well, you know, we have a lot of older people looking at our web page, and we need to adjust everything bigger. If you use M's, you're basing it on the current size, and then up in the body tag, all you have to do is change the size of the body, the font in the body, and it'll automatically cascade out throughout your web page. So if I went up in here and changed body, I could set up a body tag, and I could say font size small, and that's going to be across the whole page. Now this M down here is going to be based on the small m. So let's take a look, see what changed here. So there's my small m, and then if they come back later and I say, well, they want their text a little larger, so I'll say, instead of small, I'll say large. Larger, so I'll even go up 2 sides, and now watch how it changes automatically. My font is going to change and my margin. So it automatically changed based on what my font size. I only made one change here, in that case cascaded down the rest of my page. So the M is a really, really valuable tool to use because you'll be able to adjust automatically to whatever the font size is. And once again, you can see how valuable these borders are, because now I can see what my list items are, and I can see the space in between them. So this is really useful. Okay, to get it to go horizontal, you have to say float, colon, left, semicolon. And it has to be your whatever your ID is, and then your LI. Now, we're going to make some boxes, and notice what he's putting the boxes around. Also notice as we do this, you're learning more things about CSS. So here's our div, the name of our div, here's our LI, and now we're getting even more specific and looking at just the A tag. And again, I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to adjust it in my code. If you do this copy-paste thing like I'm doing here, make sure you understand what every line is doing. Otherwise, you just get really good at copy and pasting. And the first thing I'm going to do is clean up the code so it's more readable. And I notice, hey, those are M's. So he's doing those in adjustment to what we have in the body size. So we can see that he's a pretty smart developer because he's doing everything in the M measurement, so it'll automatically cascade to the whatever size we are. Now here's the first thing. Now he's using background, And who remembers what URL does? This URL background GIF. What does URL stand for? Okay, Uniform Resource Locator. Fantastic. What is it? What is it in English? Yeah, it basically says go find this file. Interesting enough, notice we don't have quotes around this file name. Now what this is, and these can be in any order. I usually put my color here. If this background doesn't work, if the browser can't find this image, then this is what shows up. Or if this image has any transparency in it, this is what's going to show up. And who knows what pound FFF is? It's the same as pound FFF. What color is that? It's the most red, the most green, the most blue. What color is that? No, that's the least of everything. When you turn off the lights, 0, 0, 0, then you got black. If you turn all the lights on, what do you got? You got white, white. You can't get any whiter than this. And why did they just do 3 characters instead of 6? You could do 3 more Fs, but why did he do, this is just a shortcut version. If they're all the same, you may as well do the shortcut version. Now, this says to take my graphic and move it to the bottom of this current block. So that's what the bottom stands for. This means push it all the way to the left of the A tag. And then the repeat X means repeat left and right. If we had repeat Y, you could think of the Y as like a down arrow, and that would mean repeat up and down. But we want to repeat X. Here's the height of our A tag, and we can fiddle with that too. We can change that to like 4 or 6 or 20 just to see what happens. We can also adjust the line height. You're learning a lot of CSS here. Notice it's line dash height. We're going to also float it to the left, so it's going to go in conjunction with our list item. Here's the width, and it's going to be 9 ems. Again, all of these are going to relate back to whatever font size we're using in the body. This is really important. Our display is going to be block. And then here's our border around everything. Now, the one thing he left out on the border is what color is it? We don't know. I have no clue what color that is. We'll have to go look. It'd been really nice if he had told us what color that is. And the same thing here. This is the color of his text. So I don't know what color that is either. We'll kind of figure it out. Text decoration is our underline. We're going to get rid of the underline because we don't want that in our menu item. And then we're going to align the text inside the A block. Well, let's take a look and see what this looks like just as he has it now. Without we don't have that graphic. Did I save that? Oh, do you see what it didn't work because I didn't change my, it should be navigation. Serves me right for going ahead and changing things in the middle of a demo. So there's our border. Oh, I'm going to have to turn my pink border off so I can see my new border. So my new border is kind of a blue-gray. And my text is, looks like a dark blue, doesn't it? What is it? For the text or for the border? Border, lilac, purple. I hope that isn't copyrighted. We talked about that Tuesday, Deb, when you weren't here. And then the color looked like what? Dark blue? It'd been so much easier just to say 00090. Also, you can see that he uses upper lower case on his hex code. Myself, I use all caps, but it really doesn't matter. Now, let's do some noodling around so we can see how these different things affect it. So let's look at, say, 6M for height. Make one change and then do it. You see what happens? So I'm going to go back to 2M. All right, everybody see this little graphic right here? It's really hard to see. And so if you highlight the line, do you see? You can see it right there. And if you put the tip of your arrow right on there, do a right mouse click, and then save image as. And then put it in your folder with your web page. Now I'm going to put it in my graphic folder that I built earlier. And I'm going to call it nav gradient. Notice my naming conventions. I start lowercase, no spaces, a capital G. So there's my nav gradient. Now I'm going to go into my code and I have to say it's in my graphic folder and it's nav gradient. And was it .gif? I'll have to go check. Look at my graphic folder. Yeah, and it's a .gif. Again, notice everything is lowercase except my capital of my camel case words. So I make sure I save my code and I go in and look. And there you can see my my gradient. Now notice his gradient. Oh, if I change it to white? Okay, good point. Ah, there we go. Now this is a great trick. Do you notice his gradient went from gray to transparent? And so if I used a white background, then it showed up and everything worked together. So this is where white backgrounds really come in handy, because you can do from gray to transparent and it falls right into our background. Also, do you see how much that gradient enhances these buttons? And just to show you again, I'm going to go in, I'm going to give it a weird name so it doesn't find it. Do you see how plain and ordinary that is? Now that's a beginning web page. And this is a much more sophisticated looking web page. Do you remember at the beginning of this tutorial, I talked about having a short item, a medium item, and a very long item. So do you see what happens? We've been kind of ignoring this, but do you see how these long items really throw off your menu? So the best way to do a menu system is to talk your client into having everything as close to the same length as you can. So let's go in and do that, and we'll use some actual words that you'd probably find in a normal menu. So probably home is a really common one. Products. And another good one is contact us. And now you can see that they all fit together nicely. We can also change the width by changing our div tag by itself and just changing the width. And again, notice he's using the M's, the M measurement. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go up to the top and I'm just going to change my general navigation And I'm going to say width is 30 M. And let me see. And now you can see my width went from here, and you can see it stopped here at 30 M. Again, fiddle around so you can see if I go to 60 M, I'm going to expect it to come out twice as long. So you see that's my 60 M. And if I reduce it down, you see how it went twice as long. And if you change it to 20 M, you can see it wraps. Another piece we could do is we could say 90% instead of M's. And now this is always going to run 90% of the page. Notice how my border here is helping me keep track of where these things are. That's where that's coming in from, is that debugging border I had. I have a tendency when I work with width is to work with percentages. But I can see where he's coming from with working with M spaces too. Both of them are adjustable based on different things. This is adjustable by how big the window is that the user is using. And the M's are adjustable by the font size in the body. But the point is they're adjustable. That's the most important thing. The other thing I'd like to point out is notice where I put this navigation. You want to think general to specific. So this is the general rule, and then we got into more specific rules where we did navigation UL and navigation LI, and then we got even more specific when we went to navigation LIA. So keep that in mind. You want to go from general to more specific, and that will help you order, and then it cascades like it should. Like a waterfall. You don't want it to be like a backwards waterfall. And I'm going to go in my navigation, hover, and then I'll say background color is FF or EEE. Again, I'll always put in a comment in there saying what color that is. You may have all the colors memorized, but most people don't. So here's my menu. Now watch as I hover over. Do you see how it puts in that background? And I want to change this also. So I'm going to say background and URL empty. And you see now as I hover around, it's giving the user feedback of where they are. And if you wanted to, you could also say text, decoration, underline. So now when the user hovers over, it turns gray and it becomes underlined. Now personally, I don't like that. I think it clutters it up, but that might tell people, you know, click here. And the very final piece is going into your hrefs now that you're all done, and you could change this to index HTML. This would be product HTML. And this would be to our contact page. And of course, you'd have to build these pages so you could link to those. And there's your finished menu system. My float left, that made it so it's horizontal. If I wanted a vertical menu, and again, now that it's all finished, let's comment this out and see what our menu looks like. Whoops. And then I also have to go down here and comment this out on my A tags. So now you can see that we have a vertical menu. Notice how wide it is though, so we'd have to change our width. Do you see how slick those borders help out? I'm probably going to take my debug border out too because I'm not liking that. So let me go up here to my debug, click on my number, delete the whole line, double check my work, and here I am.